Hi, my name's Annalisa, and this is going to be my TED Talk on racism. So this is actually part of my MDS class, and I'm actually really excited about it. So kind of to start off with, I'm going to tell y'all something that actually happened here to me recently. I did end up being able to go to a George Lopez comedy show. I was super excited because I watch his show every single morning whenever I wake up and clock in before work. The show was hilarious and, of course, raunchy, but it was a show that was definitely worth seeing, and I was able to see him at the Majestic Theater in San Antonio. He did make a joke about Mexicans and how they are one of the most racist cultures out there. And I had to just laugh because I can relate since I'm Hispanic too. George Lopez did make a lot of valid points about racism, and so did some of his featured comedians that are also on his tour. I'm sure that a lot of people did take it personal. However, I believe the intention was just to make light of the situation and whatever else is going on out in the world. They are comedians, of course. I know that some people may not agree with any of my points that I'm definitely going to bring up or some of the conspiracies, but it is the blessing of being American, is being able to have your free rights and have that opportunity. More definitely now than ever. When you think of racism and racist, those words, the first thoughts and feelings that come to mind are negative, hurtful, and ugly. As a true American, someone who's part of the melting pot, as we were taught from grade school early on, it's upsetting that racism is being used as an excuse to do wrong one way or another, or to wrong one another. One of the main reasons I believe that racism should be either deprioritized or reconstructed of is that the science and researchers have predicted that over the course of years, decades, and centuries, eventually humans will look the same or even identical. It's due to evolution and our lifestyle, not all necessarily on who our early ancestors were. We all live a similar lifestyle for the most part of the world, and we will adapt together more in culture rather than race and ethnicity specifically. There's a lot of culture out there that does bring us together in today's society. Of course, there are going to be a few outliers, but that's just with anything you do. And that's something that we do have to understand. So you can make the change needed over time to be better. And of course, that's the goal, is to be better, not perfect. The next topic that I want to bring up is the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. A lot of U.S. citizens were also upset with the fact that the jury declared him not guilty. He was an 18-year-old at the time, which in some ways is still a child, but of course, due to law, he can also be trialed as an adult. Many called him racist because of the shooting that had occurred at the protests, and they believe that it was related to the George Floyd death, and that he even had personal ill sentiment towards it. So, in one instance, people have claimed that the law enforcement is not doing enough to protect the citizens of the United States. And so when an individual does step up, they want to criticize and condemn him, even though he thought he was doing what he believed was right. There is such thing as a citizen's arrest, and it is legal in certain situations. However, not every situation is the same or can be compared to another. I do believe that this young male was too immature to be trusted with an armed gun because, once again, not every person is the same person and has the same mindset or mentality. But on a side note, the feminist joke is that men don't grow up till 40. So another example of how people have criticized the law enforcement is when the U.S. citizens protested the White House and broke through security and its gates, destroying our own historic artifacts. In today's world, it's like there's almost no right or wrong answer. No matter what you do, there will be someone criticizing or unhappy. With this specific trial with Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe that it was by our democracy and that justice was served because there was a right by a jury trial, which is our given right as an American, no matter the situation. I really don't like to talk about politics or any racist events with my family or friends, just because of the non-intentional hate that can come out. Another recent event was with the George Floyd death, which was a short story timeline that an African American was called in for providing fake money when trying to make it a purchase at a local store. The cops then apprehended him, which ended up choking him from the mail being suffocated. It ended up being one of the biggest controversies in the United States and the world of 2021 that year. It took over a year for the trial to be completed, in which they were found guilty. I'm very open to a lot of conspiracies and theories because of the different facts that is not always brought up in the media, which people do take the time to do their research and investigate because they want the truth to be known and for justice to be served. The further research that was provided for George Floyd was that he actually had a prior record and had even put a pregnant woman up at gunpoint prior to his killing. And that was actually pretty recent to that event. It was at the hands of the legal system that it could fall back on once more in this situation. Because in fact, with his prior record, this man actually should have not even been released from jail or been free to the public. More evidence was exposed that at the time of his death, he was on some type of illegal drugs that was not approved by a doctor. However, on the other side of the story, the cop that killed George Floyd specifically also had a long record in the law enforcement. What they record long lists of complaints as a police officer. Everyone automatically assumed that the police officer was racist. However, the cop also had very diverse colleagues that were his partners at that exact same event. This whole entire situation ended up leading to protests across the entire country, but it also came along with millions of dollars in damage to the destruction to small businesses, big corporations, homes, people who were injured and killed, and most certainly, and overall, Americans turning against one another. My personal opinion is that people use race as an excuse to display their own personal feelings and hatefulness. People always say that negativity is like a roach. Once there's one, it'll spread if you don't get rid of it right away. To point back at science, the science piece of it, at this point, we all have multiple races if you actually took the time to look up the genealogy on your ancestors. This situation has angered me, not because of the fact that an innocent man was killed not the right way, but because there is bigger things that are going on as well in the world. There was a soldier that was also murdered at Fort Hood at the same time. Now, you barely heard about her on the story or on the media and news because of everything else that was going on with George Floyd. when he was being buried in a white horse carriage for his funeral, Vanessa Guillén only had a few people from her local hometown in Texas attend hers, even though she was part of the military and had served our country at a very young age. Now, at that same time, it was also discovered that there was over 12 million additional bodies that were buried around that same area. This was on a government property, so you would think that this would be bringing more attention and would definitely be prioritized, because none of it was making sense and raising a lot of red flags that we should be paying attention to as Americans and citizens. Again, we are the melting pot, and this is something that we should live by. To think I even have had two best friends that I went to high school with who have completely disregarded each other because of the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement. Now, neither of my friends are actually racist in reality. However, one of my friends criticized the other for not making a post and not commenting on the issue at the time, and stated that they were actually part of the problem and enabling the issue because they did not speak up for the Black Lives Matter movement. So even if you do try to speak up, it's not just the media aspect of it. There's actually some employers out there that look down and monitor their employees' social media and if potentially can fire them because of the negative publicity. It can also, again, bring families, friends, and even your close loved ones that you may have known for a while against one another. Now, if you actually just Google a New York shooting, there's multiple shootings every couple of hours every single day. So just to be fair, why are we not calling every single person who is in a shooting and shoots a different ethnicity a race or racist? Just like in every other state that there is shootings as well. I grew up in a white household, and I'm half white and half Hispanic. I was raised in a small country town where you're either Mexican or your parents were white rich farmers or teachers. I felt like I never fit in because I was either or. I had a Mexican last name, so a lot of parents did not want me around their children or to stay at their house. On the other hand, my white grandparents did not like me to stay with Hispanic friends or families either. Being both cultures, I can say that I've had my racist moments where I feel like every culture and every ethnicity can be racist. And that is something that is factual. But as a new parent, I want to change the future generation and teach my kids that everyone is the same and not to define anyone by a race or ethnicity, but instead to be light or dark colored only. In order to want change, you have to be the change. I'm very passionate about this subject and would definitely like to make a difference in society. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to voice my thoughts and opinions on the heavy topic of racism. The drenching events that are becoming more and more redundant in the world is only putting us backwards. I do believe that history should be taught so that we can learn a lesson and do not repeat our mistakes. But I do also believe that we should provide insight of what we aim to strive for as humans and not countries or races or ethnicities. Just one person to the next. Thank you.